Hi friends, welcome to part 3 of my KCC 22 cards featuring the Jubilee collection that is by Rosie Studio but available for purchase at Spellbinders. I am continuing with the assembly of the 15 cards in KCC 22 and I'm picking up right back up where I left off, and so in part 2 I covered sketches 1 through 7, and in this video I'll cover sketches 8 through 15. Now with sketch number 8 and some of the subsequent sketches, like the one coming up, number 9, I always look for, anytime I see something that is extending off the edge, like those strips that I just cut off, I always try to think about how to assemble the card in such a way that I have a layer behind that piece where I can glue that piece onto it first, and then, just as I did a moment ago, snip using the edge of that piece behind it. And that helps you to get the exact right angle so you don't have to mark or measure anything. Of course, if you had glued, in my case, that gray piece of cardstock down first, it's not the end of the world. It just makes it a little bit harder to cut that perfect angle on those more narrow strips of pattern paper. So whenever I'm looking at a sketch, that's one of the things that I look for and I see as a little clue or a little hint to myself about how I might want to approach assembling that particular card. And with my focal point, I actually have this die set. I've had it for years and I have never crafted with it, but I love it and I've crafted with it several times since. It's this nested heart die set by, I bought it at Craft Stash and they've gone out of business and I can't remember what their brand was, but it was basically their in-house brand of nested shape dies, which I absolutely love. I think I just about bought every shape that they had because it was such great value for money. It was, and they were big, like the largest ones in the nested set usually went up to, I think, maybe even 8x8. So their dies are big and meant partly because in the UK, I think they do tend to make larger cards than we do, but it's also great for if you make home decor items, like things that you might frame, or if you do scrapbooking on 12x12. So it's really nice to have dies that go up that large. I don't think I've ever used the largest die in any of the sets, but I feel comforted knowing that I have it. So what I did was this heart die set in particular was kind of unique because it had a little bit of a decal or distressed sort of edge to it. So it's got that irregular decal edge, and I thought that was really, really fun, especially in a nested shape die set. You don't often see that. And so I cut the larger heart out of vellum just because I didn't want to add another color, but I did want to have a little bit of a border around this heart, and it helps to kind of soften everything behind it and also lighten it a little bit because the pattern paper that I chose for that inner heart, it's dark, and just like the gray strip in the center, so it really needed, I felt, something to lighten up the edges a little bit so that it stands apart from that dark background. And using some of the ephemera that you can get as part of the Jubilee collection, I am going to just layer up some florals, and I really like having a bit of an asymmetric design, so I'm only going to add those florals to sort of one side of it, and then and then I'll drop the sentiment onto the center of this card. Now, I am doing this video as a pre-recorded video, but my next set of KCC cards will feature Pink and Main. They are an amazing super sponsor of Kendra's Card Challenge, and they've supported Kendra from the very start of KCC. So it's so fantastic to have Pink and Main as a sponsor. And they actually sent me some goodies to craft with. So I'll actually have another set of KCC cards this month, and it will be my third actually for the quarter. And then I'm planning on what will end up being my fourth set next month with Lawn Fawn. So I'm super excited for that. Now, sketch number 9 is one that was voted as one of the trickiest sketches. And this is how I approach it. And I kind of described this a little bit with sketch number 8. See those diagonal strips? Whenever I see anything on a diagonal like that, I know that more likely than not, the edges need to be trimmed off of, that section in order to get it to look that way. And so even though the sketch doesn't show it and it doesn't give you the dimensions, what I did was I cut a piece of just plain white. I actually just used copy paper. I didn't even use anything super nice or thick. And in fact, thinner I think is better, because then it doesn't add too much thickness or bulk to your card. And so I cut that piece to, it ends up being 2 3/4 wide by 5 inches tall. And then you can lay your strips and glue them down to that piece, hanging the edges off of it. And then you can use the edge of that piece to just trim anything that overhangs. Now, the trick to this one is that your very first strip that you glue down, I like to start with the second piece. And in my case, that was the striped pattern, the one that's white and pink. So you take the second piece and you put the top right corner of that piece in the top right corner of that sort of scrap paper that we're gluing onto. Then angle it until the bottom left corner meets the left edge. And that'll get you the perfect angle, and you just keep on tiling your papers all the way down. Now, whenever I've made this sketch, it's always a little bit different to how it looks on the card sketch, because technically there's like a little portion of one of the pattern papers at the very, very bottom, but really I don't think it matters too much to the design, and this makes it just so much easier to put together. So I've always assembled sketch number 9 this way, and that's the thing that I definitely want to offer as a tip. If you're ever feeling like a particular sketch is a little bit tricky, I have a couple of suggestions. For one, you should check out videos by Kendra Beth of Bourbon Creek Crafts or from me, because as educators on the KCC design team, we have lots of videos showing our full process. So at any point in the process, if you're feeling stuck, hopefully you'll find multiple videos, one from each of us at the very minimum. And each of us actually creates a full set of KCC cards every single month. So in any given quarter, you're going to find multiple videos from us. And so hopefully you'll get some good tips and tricks from each of us. And everybody crafts a little bit differently. So the way that I approach a sketch may be different to how Beth and Kendra approaches that same sketch. And so I definitely encourage you to check out check out videos from each of us and see whose methodology makes the most sense to you. And if you can't find what you're looking for, you can always ask in the Patreon show and tell chat or in the KCC Facebook community group. One of us or somebody else in the community may offer suggestions. The other thing that I would also suggest as a tip is always kind of don't feel like you have to strictly follow the sketches. You should always feel like at the end of the day, the card is yours, and whatever unique flair you bring to it, whatever adaptations you like to make on a sketch, those are liberties that you can take, because the card sketch challenge isn't about being rigid and seeing the sketches exactly as they are presented in the printable. It's just meant to give you an idea so that you have this amazing resource of sketches that you can come back to long after the challenge ends and long after all of the prizes have been given away. You still have this wonderful resource of all of these beautiful sketches, and you can come back to them time and time again. You can draw inspiration from them, put your own little twist on it, and certainly put it together or assemble the cards in whatever way makes the most sense to you. And if it means that your card at the end of the day looks a little bit different to how things look on the sketch, that is totally okay, because at the end of the day, you should be happy with what you've created, and it should be fun to play along with the challenge and not feel like it's homework that gets graded for correctness, because there is no such thing as doing it the right way. There's no right way to play along with Kendra's card challenge. So this sketch in particular that I'm working on right now, number 10, it's pretty straightforward. It's one of the ones that I feel is one of the easiest, because it only has that one large piece of pattern paper, and then on top of it you can cut according to those white and various shades of gray blocks. One of the beautiful things about the KCC printable, which is free to download, so if you've never played along before, definitely grab this for free while you still can. It'll be free until the end of June. On July 1st, we'll start a new challenge, KCC 23. So all quarter long, you have a chance to enter once per month. And so while it's the current challenge, you can get that particular challenge PDF for free. And links to all of that will be in my description box below. Now, when you look at the card sketches, one of the things that I really like about the way Kendra puts together her sketches, because this isn't necessarily true for everybody who puts out card sketches. I know when I do my mini one-sheet wonders, I do not do this, and that is put dimensions for everything. So I really love the fact that Kendra actually puts all of the dimensions for not just those pieces of paper that come from the original 6 sheets of 6x6 pattern paper that you choose, but she also gives you all the dimensions for the mats and layers. So everywhere that you see white, gray, or black, those are pieces that you can kind of choose whatever you would like to fill with. I often turn to more pattern paper, like I've done on this sketch. And then sometimes I'll use some solid color cardstock. You could use an inky background. You could use an embossed panel. You could use a gel print that you have left over, whatever you would like. And it's kind of designer's choice how you want to fill those spaces, because again, they are just suggestions. And I think one of the things that maybe kind of gives people the impression that they need to be really precise about how they are assembling their sketches, it might be that there are those measurements, and so it might lead you to kind of think that you have to follow it precisely, but really you don't. You should really feel free to adapt and do what works for your card and for your aesthetic. Now, sketch number 11 has been voted by the KCC community as the trickiest sketch. There's always one sketch that is a little bit trickier than others. And for KCC 22, that's this one here. And I can totally see why that would be the case. But once you've mastered this sketch, trust me, I think you're going to love it. And I think you're going to probably use it time and time again. Now, on tricky sketches like these, one of the things I really like doing is just a little bit of a dry fit. And I've approached sketch number 11 multiple different ways. But what I really suggest that you try doing is first putting these strips right up against each other. Because they butt up against one another. So you can see the pieces that are angled on the left, they are orthogonal to the pieces that are sort of angled to the right. And together they form this sort of herringbone sort of pattern. And so what I like to do is dry fit everything and then just washi tape the top of them, of all of those pieces together. So now I can hold that as a single unit. And as I go to put it onto my card, all I need to do is just angle this in such a way that the all of the pattern paper kind of stretches across that gray cardstock, and that I don't see gray cardstock from sort of the top on upwards. And then I can use the edge of that gray cardstock to trim the overhang off of. So this is the same thing that I did earlier with sketch number 8, with sketch number 9. All of these sketches that have these diagonal strips, that's a really good clue, a really good hint to you that parts of that art will hang off the edge and you'll need to trim it off. In the case of sketch number 11, there's actually even a little tip or a little note that tells you the dimensions of this particular panel. And I think it measures 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And so it's just like the previous sketches that I mentioned, 8 and 9, where once you have that bottom layer that you can glue onto, it gives you a really nice straight edge to trim off of, and you don't have to worry about, what angle do you need to cut each of those individual pieces. The other thing that I really rely on quite a lot whenever I see multiple pieces of pattern paper that butt up against one another, like where they are kind of flush, one end meets another piece of pattern paper and they butt up against each other, I always use a bit of washi tape just to secure those pieces down, because I feel for me it's a lot harder to glue each of these strips down individually. I'll never get the angles right. But if I piece them all together and then just washi tape them together, then I've essentially kind of made my own new piece of pattern paper. It's just like a little quilted pattern paper, and it's all one piece that I can then manipulate a lot easier, position a lot easier as a single unit, rather than having a lot of individual pieces. Now, if you found that you adhered this down and maybe you have some gaps or some unevenness between pattern papers, I love to use a little bit of Love from Lizzie's pinstripe stickers, and I kind of run a line of pinstripe stickers against the border of all of those strips. And I think it really elevates the card and makes it really I mean, it just gives it this really nice finish, but it really cleans up those borders. So if you didn't line things up perfectly flush, then it's gonna hide all of that. So if you had like a little bit of a gap here or there, or you had a little bit of an unintentional overlap here or there, not the end of the world. Just put a little bit of the Love from Lizzie's pinstripe stickers over that, and it hides it all. Assuming your gaps aren't that big. And Love from Lizzie is a Canadian company, and so shipping might cost a little bit extra, but it's a lot more affordable these days now that they've moved their operations to Canada as opposed to where they used to ship out of, which was the UK. So I love that they're more accessible now, but usually once a year, Lizzie will do free global shipping on just the peel offs, and there's so many different styles of peel offs. I am a big fan of the pinstripe style of peel offs, but she has other shapes. She has just the straight peel offs, which are all one size. So it really kind of depends on how you like to craft and what you think you might use the most. But I highly recommend. They're not that expensive, and they last a good long time. I mean, I guess it depends on how much crafting you're doing, but for me, they last a pretty good amount of time, especially given how much I use them, which I feel like is more than the average person, but I've very rarely run out. Now, usually with this sketch, I let the pattern that we've made with the pattern papers, that sort of parquet pattern, usually I let that shine and sing on its own, and all I do is just stamp a sentiment. But on this card, I thought I would do something a little bit different, and instead of just putting a sentiment on here, I thought I would do a little bit of a collage. And don't worry, I'll show all of my cards at the end so that you can get a look at all 15 cards, in fact. So I'll recap cards, sketches 1 through 7, and I'll give a close-up look at the cards that I assembled in this video. Now onto sketch number 12. This is one of my favorite sketches. I just really like the look of this. I like the balance of it too. And as you can see here, where the sketch shows white, I'm bringing in a little bit more pattern paper from the Jubilee 6x6 paper pad. And by the way, with the Rosie Studios collections, they often do have the same designs. They have them in 6x6 and 12x12. So if you're a scrapbooker, that's perfect. Or if you're just making larger, say like home decor projects, it can be really nice to have the 12x12. But one thing to note is that basically what they do is with the 6x6 pattern, for example, they just scale that up and they stretch it to be 12x12. And so it's not, you wouldn't see the same size print as you do on a 6x6. It would actually look like it's kind of blown up a little bit. So it is a little bit different in that sense, but it's nice for larger scale projects where those projects you can probably afford to have like a larger print design. And so it's nice if you have both, because then you can kind of decide where you need a smaller print versus maybe a larger one. Now, with these banner flags, I've always done this sketch this particular way, where I actually overlap the banners, and I in fact modified one of the strips because this pink and white striped pattern, it was pink, white, pink, and then white, but what I really wanted was a little bit of balance where the left edge and the right edge both are the same color. So to get that, I actually just trimmed a little bit off of that. And so that's kind of what I mean by, when you're putting your cards together, look at what your card needs and feel free to adapt the sketch, modify the pieces so that it fits with what the perhaps what your pattern paper dictates. I mean, I really felt like the pattern paper needed to be sort of pink on both the left and right edge for that banner flag piece to kind of look, right, at least in my eyes. And so what I'm gonna do is just modify some of these ephemera pieces, because initially this bird cage was actually pretty long. And so what I did was I just cut it off a little bit and added another piece to the bottom of it to create a little bit of a focal image here. And it almost makes it seem like those banner flags are sort of, flags off of the bottom edge of that bird cage. Especially with that bow there, it just helps to kind of tidy that up a little bit. And this is one of those sketches that I feel you can really do a lot with it or be minimal with it. And that's one of the things I really like about sketches like number 11 and like this one, where a large part of the layout is featuring pattern paper. And so that almost feels like it's a focal image in and of itself, especially 11, where I really feel like that sort of pattern that we create with those strips, which, by the way, if you approach sketch 11 the way that I've done it during, I think I did it during KCC Live this month. If you want to catch the replay of that, I like to you can make a big sheet of that pattern just using, your scraps, and then you can cut it down and use them, whenever you need. So once you've mastered that tile pattern of sketch 11, you can really do a lot of scrap busting with that and create what a lot of people call a master board, and just have sheets of that ready to go. And so it's a great way to use up your scraps and create something entirely new, and is in and of itself a really nice focal image. Now, with sketch 13, it's another one where I feel like the pieces are really simple. You've got one really large piece, that yellow, what's shown in yellow, and then the what's shown in orange is also one of the 6 sheets of 6x6 pattern paper, which, by the way, if you are just watching this video and you're not familiar, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but this is part 3 of a video series, and so if you didn't already watch parts 1 and 2, I'll link to those in the description box also. But in part 1, I actually choose my pattern papers, I talk about how I make my selections, and I show you actually how to cut those 6 sheets of pattern paper according to the cutting guide that is part of the PDF that you can get for free. And then in part 2, I start to assemble sketches, and I made it from sketch 1 to sketch 7. And with this one, that second banner flag that's on top, on some sketches I haven't used it at all. And on this one, I will use that banner, but I added, again, sort of my default is to look for more pattern paper. So I picked another pattern paper that I thought would be a nice contrast between the two that are already there. And one of the things I look for when I'm combining multiple pattern papers like this is I really want to make sure that each of them stands out on their own. So, for example, all 3 of them are floral prints. So that is something that connects them together, although they are part of the same paper collection. So I think in any case, they're going to feel very much connected. But you might think 3 florals seems a bit too much floral? Aren't they all going to look too much the same? But you can see one has a black background, the other has a white background, so those actually have a lot of contrast between them. And then the green one that is the banner I added, that is so subtle. It's almost like it's just I mean, if you just glance at it, it almost looks just like, slightly textured solid color cardstock. And so I feel like the three of them just are different enough that you can still appreciate them and spot them from one another. They don't just kind of blend into each other. Sketch 14 is another fun one that can feature a lot of pattern paper if you want, because there's really only 2 pattern papers from the original 6. There's what's represented in yellow on the sketch, and there's what's represented in pink. But you have those 2 gray blocks, which you can choose to add whatever you would like. And so this design is another one that is really nice with just creating your own pattern. And what I like to do with this one is I try to kind of like when I put together a jigsaw puzzle, I like to start at the corners and the edges. In particular, the corners, because when you get the 2 corners in, you have 2 edges to really kind of eyeball and try to keep even. So once you have that set, then anything in between, you can just equally space this out. And even if all of your margins aren't identical, at the very least, whatever you're putting in the center, it's going to it'll be centered. And in this case, I just had some scrap cardstock here. It wasn't already cut to size, and so I'm just going to trim that down and make it fit as close as I can. But with whatever gap is in the middle there, I'm just going to do my best to center it top and bottom with the space that I have. And if it's not perfect, it's not the end of the world, because oftentimes the pattern that you're creating, just depending on what else you're going to do with your card, but it can be just a starting point, just the background to something more. And so once you start collaging and adding your focal image and adding your sentiment, whatever you've done in the back there, it's gonna start to fade more and more into the background. And so any imperfections that you may have, they're gonna quickly be hidden, covered up possibly, but at the very least, they're gonna be not really the focus anymore. And so while it may seem like it doesn't look good initially, or it doesn't look centered initially, or it doesn't look evenly spaced, by the time you're done with your card, I think a lot of that's not going to be noticeable, or certainly less noticeable than you would think. So I'm just going to continue to collage these pieces up. One of the things that's really great about the Jubilee collection is that you have a lot of options to craft with. I mean, their ephemera pack is very, very generous. And so there's quite a lot to choose from. And I love the fact that they actually have like one ephemera pack that's for focal images, and then they have like an entirely separate ephemera pack that is mostly sentiments, if not all sentiments. So that I thought I've always appreciated as well, because sometimes I find that with other ephemera packs, you might have like too much of one, not enough of the other. And so with Rosie Studios, it's just really nice that you just have a lot of both, if that's what you want. But you know that when you're getting an ephemera pack, because it's They do have explicitly two different ones, one for focal images and one for sentiments. You know what you're getting. So, so you know if you just want the focal images and you'll get your sentiments elsewhere, then that's the one for you. If you just want to have a boatload of sentiments and you'll find focal images elsewhere, then you can just get that one. Or if you're like me, then you can get them both. So really, really love that. And then now we're on to our last card. So sketch number 15. Again, this is another really simple one. And in fact, it only actually has one piece from the initial set of 6x6 pattern papers, and that's this one that on the sketch is represented in yellow. And everything else is up to you what you would like. So I picked a little bit of pattern paper for the what's represented in gray on the sketch, and otherwise just solid color cardstock everywhere else. With this one, I am following the measurements pretty closely. Don't mess with a good thing if you don't have to. I try to stick to the sketches, but if I need, I'll just adapt things a little bit. And in particular, this one, that cupcake I just really, really wanted to use. And I even thought about maybe trying to make those rectangles a little bit bigger, but I did ultimately just stick with it. So here is a final look at all 15 cards from KCC 22 featuring the Jubilee collection by Rosie's Studios, which is available at Spellbinders. So this is sketch number 1. I really love these butterflies. I just can't get enough of those. I wish I had gotten 2 packs of it. They're just really lovely. They're dimensional. It's got a little bit of that acetate, a little bit of foiling. Just love it. That was a look at sketch number 2. This is sketch number 3. I do love that some of the pattern papers, some of the ephemera have gold foiling on them, so that really makes it shine like the sentiment on here. Sketch number 4, that's a fun one. You can do a lot with that and collage up those pieces any way you'd like. And sketch number 5, I love all of these angles. I'm a big fan of the angles. I think maybe that might be one of the things with some of the sketches that make it a little bit challenging, but I love the asymmetric look that those angles create. And then this is sketch number 7. So these first 7 cards I created in part 2. So if you want to see how I made these videos, then you can check out part 2 of this series. Again, part 1 was where I chose the initial 6 sheets of 6x6 pattern papers that I used to create all of these cards. And I talked a little bit about how I prep and choose more pattern papers and cut all of my various different layers for each of the sketches, and then that way going into these parts 2 and 3, I can really just assemble the cards. And then, so now here's a look at the cards that I completed in this video. So starting with sketch number 8, again, another sketch where there's some angles there. And remember, my tip is whenever you see angles like this, look for ways where you can glue that piece to something behind it, and then that way you can just let that piece run off the edge and then use the edges of that piece behind it to snip off of. Sketch number 11 and 9, I know that they're a little bit tricky, but those are kind of up there in terms of some of my favorites, because like this one as well, the pattern that you create with the papers almost becomes a focal image in and of itself, and it means you don't have to do too much more to the card. Now with this set of cards, because I had so much ephemera to work with, so many options for sentiments, I really did try to go all out and decorate it a lot. And I'm really happy with how this set turned out. So Thank you so much for catching this series. Big thank you to all of my channel members for your support. I really appreciate everything that you do. And if you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll give it a like. And if you aren't already, I hope you'll subscribe. If you have any questions about KCC, don't hesitate to drop them in the comments below. I read all of my comments and I try to reply to all of them as well. Thank you again, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.